Hello, everybody, and today for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I'm reviewing April's Artifact. So this is where April is still trying to dig up her stuff for the new antique shop, and the Turtles and Casey are helping out until they find an old artifact that sends them to a different dimension. And they have to find their way all the way back while dealing with a bunch of bug creatures in a wasteland jungle. So this episode kind of reminded me of Ninja Turtles 3, where April finds some relic and she tries to give it to Splinter, but instead it sends the Turtles and April back in time. In this, like I said, it's another dimension. And I actually really do like the world that they go to, the jungle. It looks really good with the 2D animation. There's just a lot to look at. As for the bug creatures, they definitely look deadly because literally while the Turtles are fighting these creatures, they don't have their weapons because April got mad because they ended up knocking down some things and she wants them to have their weapons. And even Mikey calls her out for making them give her the weapons. So they have to make their own weapons, and they literally do, to fight these bug creatures. But they have to worry about not getting stung by some of them. And literally, Raph gets stung by one, and he ends up getting an infection, and he just becomes super dizzy throughout the episode. But April is ripped throughout this whole episode. She literally tears her pant legs, and she tears a little bit of her shirt off, and she just looks super good looking in that uniform. But yeah, I just realized how pale April is. But she ends up building a spear that will take out the various bugs until they find their way to a tree house where it's revealed that they're April's uncle that she grew up with apparently lived at this jungle because he was transported there, because she doesn't know exactly what happened to him. He would always go on adventures when she was a kid, and he'd return artifacts until one day he just disappeared. And now we know where he went. He went to this other dimension, and they're able to use some of his notes in his journal that they find to navigate their way to the temple. And they do eventually find it, but they realize they have to take out the rest of the bugs by having some kind of distraction. So Donnie comes up with a way by jumping into the mud, and they all just probably don't smell very good. But eventually they do go to the temple, and they do find the artifact that looks like a giant version of it, but they have to get through more bugs, of course, and it leads to a pretty good battle. And Leo's able to use some of the stingers as weapons, because their weapons that they made end up just not working at all on the bugs. But they manage to fight the rest of them. And eventually they do turn the thing around, and Raph gets stung again by the same wasp thing. But they turn the thing around and they do go home. But unfortunately they do not find April's uncle. I think there is a sequel to this episode where we do find out what happened to him. But April's able to find some kind of closure for what maybe happened to her uncle. But I liked how this episode was just centered on April, and she was able to use some of her skills, Adventure Girl skills, to good use in this episode. It was nice to see April bond with the Turtles again, because it feels like we haven't really seen her in the show for a little bit. But it would have been cooler if we did see Casey in this episode a lot more. But there's definitely a lot to talk about for this episode because of how creative it was, even though it was episodes set out from the main story. But overall, I think this was definitely a highlight episode for sure. If you want to check out a good April episode for this show, this is definitely on top of the list for sure, as we do learn a lot more about April's backstory for sure. I don't know if it is something similar that they did in the Mirage comics, but they did a lot for April's character in those comics. But they probably did a lot of things different for this incarnation of her for sure. But the next episode, I think, is another episode outside of the main story. So be on the lookout for that, as we're getting very close to the end of the second season already. So anyway, thanks for watching, and Turtle Power.